What did our Seawolves have for us this
Our
week, Bel?
Seawolves are muscling through here. On the 18th, they played the Houston SaberCats and they won 46-27. Player of the game, and I feel like a name that I've said pretty frequently here. Fly half AJ Elatimu, 14 points scored, the game leader, 4 goal kicks, 232 kicking meters, 9 tackles made, 70 running meters. MLR Western Conference Championship, of course, and Seattle heads to the MLR title match. And I mean, just like you said, they've got nothing to lose here, and they're playing like it. And look at what it's getting them. Look how far they've come.
I mean, so with Circling Seattle Sports being a podcast, we hadn't actually added the Seawolves until this past year, right? And so the entire club, from the general manager Pate, my buddy Pate, to Carly, the PR staff, they've all been really welcoming the players. I spoke with Tani Tupo. Tani going to UW, playing with the Seahawks and the Seattle Dragons of the XFL. They've all been up and down, just like the rain, up and down, great to cover, right? And so they went 4-12 last year, which, if you don't know about records, it's bad. And then the year before that, in the COVID year, where they only played 5 games before the season ended, they're 1-4. So with that game they won against Houston 2 in the second to last game of the season, they were, I think, 9-6 at the time. I'm okay with that, right? It's more of a bounce back. You fought till near the end of the season, and you were almost in the playoffs. I would consider that, from 4-12 to that, I consider that an improvement, right? Then all of a sudden, now you're playing in the Western Conference Final, and you steamroll Houston, and now you're playing for a third title. It's just been an incredible run for our rugby team, and they're playing not for their first title, folks. This would be their third title. So, I mean, hardware speaks. Hardware speaks.
It does.
Right? So, with that being said, we would be remiss. I know I tweeted about it on Sunday. We've got a little bit of a preview here versus Rugby New York. Do you want to take a look at some things? I know we've got our last head-to-head matchups. We've got some stats to look at. You want to take a look at that?
The teams played head-to-head on May 15th. New York won 30-22. That was in New York. Low-scoring affair, only 3 penalty kicks between both teams. Seattle conceded 17 penalties to New York's 8.
Now, that's key there, right? Because you see only, what was it? Was it 3 penalty kicks total, 17 penalties. I mean, New York was a team that was in a position for the playoffs for, while we were looking at them on the looking ahead section during that week before that we looked at them, they were in a playoffs team. So, I mean, any game normally you got to be clinical. You don't want to make a lot of mistakes. You don't want to commit a lot of penalties. 17 to New York's 8. You can't do that, right? And the last game that they played, New York played against New England. New England was we'll look at that here, I think, in a second. But yeah, New York beat New England in the Eastern Conference Championship. New York was the 3 seed. New England was the 1 seed. So they come in, they beat them by, I believe it was 8 points. Both teams can scrap it out. But I think the biggest thing from that head-to-head matchup was those 17 penalties. I don't know about you, but 17, that's definitely doubling your opponent. You can't do that. So that's one thing to pay attention to. And at least what I noticed in the game against San Diego a few weeks ago, Seattle took great advantage of the penalties that San Diego committed. So that's something, taking what the other team gives you, right?
Yeah.
So I think that was the biggest thing that I noticed from the head-to-head match.
And who are the key players that you think we need to watch out for here?
So, I wish that MLR would do a better job of giving us the stats, but at least looking at, some leaders and things like points and try scoring, Jack Heighton, a fly half fullback for New York, was their top scorer with 67 points. He was the league's number 10 scorer. AJ Latimu, our buddy, right, was number 2 in the league, only 1 point behind number 1. So Heighton, league scorer. So he's going to be, he seems like a guy, obviously, with the amount of points he had, who's going to make his kicks, those penalty kicks, right? Those try conversions. He's going to, so at the end of the day, you don't want to give up these penalties. And then for try scoring, we look at top players. I would have Heighton and Ed Fido. Ed Fido's a wing for New York. He's their leading try scorer with 12. He led the league with tries scored, only 2 ahead of Seattle's Rickard Hatting with 10. So Fido's going to be somebody that I'm going to want to make sure that you tackle, that you get ahead of, that you make sure he's not getting anywhere near the try line.
Yeah.
Regardless of that thing. And then he was also their leading ball carrier. So, with tackling, right, it was 1,663 meters traveled. He's the 4th highest in the league in meters traveled. behind Duncan Matthews for Seattle, who was third with 1,775. Try score and ball carry. Here's a guy that's going to be primary for them, right? He's going to be their golden goose of sorts. So you got to take care of that. Got to make sure Fido is, if you had proverbial whiteboard, right? Circle that name right there.
Yeah.
So that's what I would do. But I think this is an achievable game. You played what was that loss? An 8-point loss to them head to head? 8-point loss. They just beat New England, the number one team in the Eastern Conference, by 8. You lost. I mean, those 17 penalties are key, right, in that head-to-head loss. So
it'll be interesting because they both have some momentum there. New York beating, like you said, New England, who was number one. And then, of course, the Seawolves have been just fighting their way through. And at this point, like you said, have literally nothing to lose.
And what did we talk about last week? How their first 2 titles that they won, they were not supposed to win at all. They're supposed to win it all this year? No.
So we're going in as underdogs.
Yeah, you're going in as underdogs because I think New York was actually, at the time that the Seawolves were technically eliminated, New York was actually a playoff team. So one of these guys is technically supposed to be here. We're not supposed to be here.
Oh, right.
It doesn't matter.
But we are.
So that'll be really exciting. That game is going to be, we look at it, an 11-7 record. Their next matchup against Rugby New York. June 25th versus Rugby New York. Unfortunately, it's a 9 a.m. start time because this is a league that, similar to some of the women's leagues, it doesn't get the pull that some of these other leagues get. They're going to play at 9 a.m. Pacific. Over in New York, that'll be a noon start, right? But you can watch this on Fox. This will be on Fox if you've got cable. Yeah. If you do not, we'll tweet it out. The Rugby Network, all one word.com. You can watch those for free. You don't need an account. That game will be streamed on there, and I'll make sure to tweet that link out in the days beforehand and the day of so that you can watch that. But this is a big deal. This is another title, Seattle. So,
and if you can't watch it, then you can always follow Circling Sports, who provides updates on the game.
Yes, you can.